guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this setup looks a little bit different because your girl got a new camera, and you know what that means. It means I'm not going anywhere because I have invested my coins into this new passion project of mine. So your girl ain't going anywhere, and I really hope you guys can tell that there's a difference from my janky ass iPhone last week. Anyway, so first of all, I wanted to just come on here and say thank you to everyone who supported my launch last week. Yay! It was really awesome to just see so many people support this new passion project of mine, share my video, and also subscribe to my channel. That's so weird. But while we're talking about subscribe, why don't you guys click the button down below and subscribe to my channel? This is just one of the few videos that I will be posting throughout the week. I'm hoping to get about 2 videos out per week. We'll see how that goes. But on Wednesdays, I really want to create videos that really focus on one of the things that I'm most passionate about, which is racial inequality. And that's really the whole reason why I started my videos. Wednesdays became known as Awkward Wednesdays, and that ain't going anywhere. We're just getting bigger and better, guys. So for today's first YouTube Woke Word Wednesday, we're gonna be talking a little bit about performative activism. What it is, who's guilty of it, and why it's so problematic. So why don't we just start right off the bat with defining what performative activism is. So performative activism is essentially a pejorative term that means people who join a cause for nothing more than their own social clout. So they're not necessarily joining this cause because they're super passionate about it. They're doing this more in a performative way because they're afraid of what society will say about them if they aren't participating. Yeah, I know, it sounds as stupid as it is. And I think it has become extremely common, especially in the age of social media. I think everyone is guilty, including myself, y'all. I'm not gonna come on here and be a hypocrite. I am probably super guilty of, in some way, shape, or form, playing into this trend. I think we all are. And this term isn't specific to just racial inequality, but I'm really gonna focus on performative activism in the lens of racial inequality, because I think that's what I'm most passionate about, and that's one of the examples that I think is so glaring and so common, and I think we were all guilty of participating in it a couple of months back. So I don't know if you guys remember, but around May, June, coming out of the events of the George Floyd murder, there were a lot of protests. There was a lot of social uproar around police brutality and racial inequality. People were really rallying behind the Black Lives Matter movement. People started posting these little black squares. I think we all remember that famous Tuesday when all of our feeds were looking just a little bit dark. I think there was a statistic that said about 50 million people 50 million people posted these black squares. So let's start out by dissecting what the purpose of these black squares originally was. So these black squares were, number one, never meant to be posted by Black men and women. These black squares were essentially supposed to be for non-people of color, non-Black people to post, to provide additional space and to provide more space and more focus on Black people that were a part of this movement so that their voices could be heard more loudly. That sounds wonderful, right?
So, that ain't no problem. Huh? That ain't no problem.
There were a lot of protests happening at the same time, and the way that these protests were really gaining speed and gaining fire was through social media. That's how people knew what was happening, because the mainstream media was only reporting on portions of it. So the way that a lot of activists, real activists, were getting information out to protesters was through social media. Well, when your feed is overrun by black squares, and when everybody's hashtagging Black Lives Matter under these black squares, it makes it really hard for the people who need to get these resources to post and find those resources under those specific hashtags. Another massive issue is that honestly became super performative. I think a lot of people posted those black squares because they were afraid of what it would mean if they didn't. They were afraid that if by not posting those black squares, they would be considered a racist and a bigot. And I think in a lot of ways, your silence is probably a better use of your social media than to have essentially created this false narrative of hope. A lot of people were posting these black squares, but they weren't really cognizant of the responsibility of what it meant to post these black squares. You couldn't just post the black square and then go on with your day and your life. With that comes a lot of internal rumination. Is that a word? Rumination? It is now, but with that comes a lot of internal soul searching that you have to do. You have to dig deep in yourself and really uncover your problematic behavior. You really have to do the work internally so that you could do the work externally. And I think we saw a lot of people who were posting resources and posting these black squares and then did nothing.
We have a problem.
So one of the biggest culprits of these black squares were a lot of brands and a lot of YouTubers on their social media, a lot of influencers who were posting these black squares. But I beg the question, did any of them really know what it meant to post those black squares? Did any of them really know that by posting these things and not making daily actions in their lives to change how they move around this world and how they're using their platform and their privilege for the betterment of marginalized communities, if they had known that, would they have still done it? And if they hadn't, would we still be this upset? I think I'm more upset about people who posted these things and then did nothing about it and have continued to do nothing about it.
Girl, bye.
Something else to consider though is if people aren't posting, are they still doing the work? We have become such a socially focused community that if people aren't posting it, it isn't happening. Like, take a picture, it didn't happen. If you go out to the movies with your friends and you don't take a selfie, did you go to the movies with your friends? And we live for the validation of what society and what social media tells us, which is super problematic. I can't live my life for other people, and neither should you. I think something else that we saw a lot of brands do was find the 3 black girls that they had on staff, the 1 dark-skinned girl that they had on staff, and just blast them all over social media. They gave us this false, beautiful picture of how diverse they were and how willing to change they were and how willing to do the work they were. But if you go back to their social media feeds, do you still see those same girls?
Themselves. Yeah, in the words of Whitney Houston,
the truth is the numbers speak for themselves. Whatever.
No.
With no. We're seeing a lot of brands, a lot of companies jump on this bandwagon of wanting to make diversity, equity, and inclusion a PR angle and not a daily function of how they operate their business and how they honestly manage other parts of their business, how they recruit, how influencers take on different partnerships. Like, I would be willing to bet money that most influencers that are working with brands don't actually ask, how many women of color are you planning to also have as a part of this partnership? You have a place at the table and you're not advocating and making space for other people who don't look like you to sit at this table, but yet you're still continuing to post resources. Are you actually doing the work? Or are you just doing this so that people think you are? Listen, wokeness is a journey. It is a big journey that requires a lot of self-reflection and it requires a lot of unlearning behavior. And if you're not ready to do that and invest in that, that's fine. I'm not here to tell you that you have to. But what I think is important is acknowledging that you're not ready, and don't give people the false hope that you are ready and that you are an ally. but that's a whole different video. I love social media. I thrive on it. I think it's so much fun. I think it is such a cool way to interact with people, to get to know people, to really just build friendships. I think there's something really awesome about the world that we live in, that we can make really meaningful connections with people who are across the country and across the world. I think there's something really, really problematic when you start to live your life based on what social media tells you to do. And I think that is why performative activism has become so big. This is about how people move and do their everyday lives. I've seen a lot of brands go back to their cookie cutter Instagram feeds. I've seen the emphasis and the focus on Black-owned businesses really decrease in the past couple of months. And it's disheartening, but as unfortunate as it was, the events of May and June are really a catalyst and have really put a microscope on a lot of people, and I think are empowering a lot of people to not only speak up, but also call people out. Like, if I see something wrong, you best believe I'm gonna call you out. A couple of, maybe like a year or so ago, I actually messaged an influencer, a blogger that I followed, and I really enjoyed her content, and she was doing these Tuesday roundups of other bloggers to follow if you liked her content. And I saw a pattern that a lot of these bloggers and a lot of these influencers all looked the same. They were all a size 0, they were all blonde, they all had blue eyes. So I actually reached out to her and I asked her, hey, I love your Tuesday roundups. I think they're super cool. They've really helped me find new bloggers that I want to follow. I think it would be awesome if you featured some bloggers of color, if you featured some curvy bloggers and not just one Black curvy blogger every other week. At that point, you're just knocking 2 birds out with 1 stone to say you did it. I didn't get a response at all. Not 1 word. But then a year later, she was all about that Blackout Tuesday. She was all about sharing those resources. So to me, it's like, why now? Why not have that conversation a year ago? Because this isn't new. None of the things that we're fighting for are new. Racial inequality isn't new. The only thing that is new is your found interest in it. All right, guys, so we've talked a little bit about what performative activism is, why it's so problematic, the influence of social media, but what do we do to fix it? I don't know that I have the answers on how to fix people from being performative, but I think one of the biggest things that we can do is to hold each other accountable and hold people accountable. Honestly, guys, hold me accountable. I want this to be an open conversation. So if I was speaking some straight BS, let me know in the comments. This is supposed to be open dialogue. You my girl, I'm your girl. Let's chat, let's talk, but let's keep it respectful. None of these things are gonna change overnight, but I think it's gonna require a collective commitment to wanting to do the work and wanting to act on it versus just doing it because social media tells us to. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I want to keep having conversations like this. So if there's anything specific that you guys want to talk about, leave it in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and follow your girl on Instagram. Bye, guys. See you next time.